koutou, no mai, haere mai, and welcome back to another episode of Showy Ovaries. I have been deeply dormant for a lot of 2025, like perimenopausal ovaries, and suddenly I'm sputtering back into life to release a few more ovums in 2025 for your ears to soak up. This is a special edition of Showy Ovaries that I am renaming Showy Bonnets to celebrate some milestones. Most importantly, today, the 16th of December 2025, is the 250th birthday of the woman that has changed both mine and my guests' lives, the literary goddess that is Jane Austen. It is also 30 years since two iconic screen Austens were released. Nearly exactly this day in 1995, my gateway drug, Emma Thompson's Sense and Sensibility, graced the big screen, along with many, many, many others' gateway drug, the BBC's Pride and Prejudice, which hooked so many of the world on the small screen. It's also 20 years since Matthew Macfadyen brooded over Keira Knightley in the Pride and Prejudice movie, 17 years since I started doing Austen shows with Austen Found, which we are coincidentally performing tonight at Tapak in Auckland, and 29 years since my guest, Susannah Fullerton, took over the helm of the Jane Austen Society of Australia, which she still reigns over like the literary queen she is. Susannah, who has a Medal of Order for Services to Literature from the Australian Government and is a Fellow for the Royal Society of New South Wales, is a lecturer, speaker, literary tour guide, author, academic writer, powerhouse generator of countless literary-themed events and gatherings, and the ultimate Janeite, which is a Jane Austen fan, in case you had not heard of that term. Her energy is as boundless as Lydia around a regimental soldier. Her intellect equal to Elizabeth Bennet, and her Paddington flat rivals Lady Catherine's Rosings, but with better pizza. She was an enormous help to me in touring Australia this year with Promise and Promiscuity, and I'm delighted to welcome her to my podcast from said Paddington flat. It is Susannah Fullerton. Hooray! Welcome, welcome. Kia ora. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for that lovely introduction.
Oh, there's more to come. There's more to come. There's so much to say. You're doing a lot.
I am indeed. And of course, this is just such an incredibly special day with Jane Austen's 250th birthday being celebrated around the world. This really is a global event. And as you said, Jane Austen has changed our lives. So for me, this is a hugely important day.
Absolutely. And what are you doing for the birthday itself? Which is today, obviously, but we are doing this 2 weeks ago. So what are you doing on this day in 2 weeks?
Well, it's very exciting that New South Wales State Parliament is hosting a high tea, especially for Jane Austen's birthday. So the most important building in the state is getting in on the act, and we're going to have a wonderful high tea. It's been booked out for some weeks now with 300 people attending. They've got a waiting list. I'm going to be doing some readings, chosen readings from Pride and Prejudice and from Emma. That's going to be lots of fun. But I'm also going to find some time today to just sit quietly with 6 books in front of me. And I'm just going to let them fall open wherever they happen to fall. And I'm going to read and I'm going to delight in what I'm reading, no matter which page it is, it doesn't matter. And I'm just going to feel incredibly grateful that Jane Austen was born on this day 250 years ago, and that her books have given me so much pleasure, have given me my career, they have enriched my life, they've given me my friends, they've just done so much for me. Going to delight that that baby girl was born in Hampshire 250 years ago. I think she needs a birthday cake.
Yes, I did look at getting a birthday cake for Tapak, but they're quite expensive to feed like 150 people. So I think I might get some chocolates. Do you have a favourite Jane Austen?
Yes, Emma. Emma's the one I love the most. Pride and Prejudice was my first, but Emma is the one that I think is her utter masterpiece. I think it's the greatest novel that's ever been written. I don't think a single word could be changed to improve it in any way. I absolutely worship that novel.
Sense and Sensibility is my favourite because it was the first, and I just loved that screen adaptation so much.
That's the best movie, isn't it? The best Jane Austen movie by a long way.
I agree entirely, because it was just it's beautifully done, beautifully portrayed the book, but just those wonderful actors as well that just
Perfect.
And and she did update some stuff for a bit of a more modern sensibility, that things like, because in the book Edward is a bit dull, and they made him slightly less dull on the screen.
He needed a bit of pep, and I think you can see the reasons why she made the changes.
Yeah,
she gave Margaret more of a role. school as the younger sister, and you can see why she did those changes. And I think she did such an amazing job with it. Great actors, gorgeous filming. It really is the best movie version of a Jane Austen
Yes,
novel.
because there's that tricky thing around, modern sensibilities applied to old books. And yes, I can see that it was of the time, but I can also see that the fact that 35-year-olds married 16-year-olds is pretty gross ultimately. So she aged Marianne up slightly, etc. And I think things like that are good for a modern sensibility. And I think we can acknowledge that that was the way it was, but also acknowledge that misogyny and female suppression and dominance was so much that that was something that could happen. Whereas we've come a bit further now and 16-year-olds are actually children.
Totally.
Yeah. Anyway, now I have a longer introduction for you that I'm going to do now because there's just so much to say about you. So here we go. Susannah Fullerton was born in a town I have performed in quite a lot, Edmonton in Canada in 1960. She then moved to Auckland and grew up in New Zealand, though your Wikipedia entry calls you a Canadian Australian, which I took.
I know, which is all wrong.
I know. I took umbrage with when I read
I'm
that.
a Kiwi.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, and it was in my hometown of Christchurch that your mother first read to you from Pride and Prejudice, and she was hooked. She went on to major in English literature at Auckland University, and then a postgraduate degree in Victorian fiction and prose from Edinburgh University. She then moved to Australia and has become one of the most sought-after speakers in Australia and the world, really, on all manner of literary grades. She adores all things historical, being a founding member of the Dickens and Bronte Societies of Australia, is the patron of the Kipling and Georgette Heyer Societies, a member of the Dylan Thomas Society, and of course the shining matriarch of the Austen Society. She's written various books, available to buy, of course, look in the episode notes for this, such as Jane Austen and Crime, Brief Encounters, Literary Travellers in Australia, Happily Ever After, celebrating Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, but most recently, and selling its whiskers off. In fact, it has sold out with more stock due soon. Has it arrived yet, the new stock?
No, it's due any day.
Okay, which is Great Writers and the Cats Who Owned Them, which I love as a title. A celebration of writers such as Dickens, Hemingway, and our very own Dame Linley Dodds Woodskit, who was the inspiration for Slinky Malinky. She's not in Australia. She's flitting around the world, leading literary tours such as the upcoming Marshes, Mists and Murders, a literary exploration of East Anglia with music and musical interludes, and artistic interludes in 2027. Basically, I would like to be her when she grows up. She's crafted a career from her passions and is a wonderfully welcoming, encouraging and professional ambassador for all things literary, with Austen at the very tippy top. So one more time, please go wild like Marianne on a wanton carriage ride for Susannah Fullerton. Hooray!
Thank you, Penny.
That's right. Do you like hearing all of that at once?
Oh my goodness. I feel exhausted just hearing about it.
And you did that.
Let alone trying to live
yes,
it.
Yes. And you've been doing, so when did it all start? Was it like, because you've been doing that since you were 30?
Early 30s, yes. So it just started gradually, where I began giving the odd talk about writers that I liked, and I loved giving talks. And one thing really just led to another. Then I started writing books, then I began leading my literary tours. So I really have turned my passion for books into a job, which has been wonderful. I love my career. I don't want to retire from it. I absolutely love it. So I will keep going.
And one thing I've discovered is that women of a certain age are certainly the ones that drive buying the tickets to theatre shows.
Absolutely.
The women of like 45 plus is who I advertise to on Facebook, and I find that they've got the passion, and a lot of the time they've got more disposable income now. Obviously, this is very difficult times currently, but often their children have left home, etc., and they wanted to spread their wings and do fun things.
And it's women who are buying the books. It's women that keep the bookshops going, and the same with literary tours. It's mainly women who are coming on my literary tours in different places around the world. It's women mainly who turn up to my talks. I'd love to have more men come along, but it's women who are really driving forces.
It was quite funny because I gave a talk to the Jane Austen Society about my famous uncle who flirted with Jane Austen. And my uncle came, who's the one who discovered the connection when he was doing ancestry stuff. And he's such an Aussie bloke. He was like, oh, there's not very many men here. Like, oh no. Like, it was so funny. I'm like, you'll be fine, Uncle Dave. Sat at the back and then was like, oh, that, and then quite enjoyed himself. And he came to my theatre show and he hadn't been to the theatre in like 40 years. Or something crazy. And so so it's like women rule the world, let's be honest. Well, except for these warmongering men at the top who've just always, yes, if only women could, break that glass ceiling and stop killing each other. That would
And
be good.
those warmongering men might be much better people if they read a few novels.
That's right. That's right.
I think they might learn some very badly needed lessons.
Putin just needs to read Pride and Prejudice. That's what Putin
Oh,
needs to do.
yeah, he does.
So what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I thought for a long time of being a school teacher
Ah,
because I knew whatever I did had to have something to do with books. So I thought, well, I'll become an English teacher. But I sort of went off that idea when I was at high school myself, and I saw, well, I was the most attentive child in the class. Some of the others were not, and they hated the books, and they complained when there had to be a poem read or discussed. And I thought, oh, do I really want to stand up in front of kids like this and give talks about the books and the poems that I adore? And find that they're not listening in the back row or they're, throwing paper darts or whatever it might be.
right.
So I really went off the idea. And then I did a master's in English literature, which is what I did at Edinburgh. And I thought, oh, help, what sort of career does passion for books lead to? Do I become a librarian? But, you're handling books then, but you're not necessarily talking about them with people. So then I was busy for some years. I had small children, and it was really only once the children had all got to school that I began giving the odd talk. And I thought, oh, I've now found what Tiggers like best. I can talk to adults. Adults choose to come. Nobody's going to be badly behaved in the back row. I don't have to worry about marking. I don't have admin and red tape. I can choose whichever favourite authors I want to talk about. I don't need to give talks on any author I don't enjoy. So I found that I really had complete freedom to choose what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. Fitted in very well with children who were, coming home from school and needed taking to soccer or whatever it might be. So gradually my career just sort of grew. So it really all came about by accident, and I'm incredibly grateful that it did.
Yes, I met your husband. He was very charming. He didn't come to the talk, did he, if I recall? Yeah.
No, he didn't. He doesn't come to the Jane Austen Society. He has yet to be converted, Penny. I have tried, believe me, I have tried.
Yes, my husband, I tried to make him watch Sense and Sensibility, and he just wouldn't do it. He eventually did, but yeah, no, he not for him, and that is fine. But your husband, well, sorry, I've forgotten his name. What was
Ian?
Ian, that's right, but he was
Ian.
very supportive.
Yeah, well, yes.
Oh. Okay, what's that story then?
Well, I think he feels I read too much, and he's a bit puzzled by my career. So he's moderately supportive, but I wouldn't say fantastically.
Oh, okay. What does he do?
He's a lawyer.
See, like the manipulation of words in a pleasing and dexterous manner is surely something that would be pleasing to a lawyer.
You'd think so, but no.
You would think so. That's so funny. What about your children? What do they think?
Oh, they're all delighted with what I do. And they've been so proud of my recent book, my book on famous authors and the cats who own them. They were all there for the book launch, and so was my husband. Everyone made it into a very special occasion. So,
fantastic.
My children all read, but one more than the other two loves audiobooks, which is great. So, but I've yet to get both my boys to read Jane Austen. So that's another work in progress.
Wow, interesting. Right, okay. So who don't you like as a writer, not a person?
Well, I'm not crazy about James Joyce, I have to say.
Quite hard to read?
Yes, I've read Ulysses twice, but I don't intend ever to read Finnegan's Wake. I agree with George Bernard Shaw, who in his 90s said, life is too short to read Finnegan's Wake.
Right, okay.
Who else don't I? Well,
you're on every society for every person.
Yes, I'm very promiscuous, you see.
I can, as promises of promiscuity is something that
absolutely. I'm totally promiscuous when it comes to my literary societies and also my literary loves. There's so many men I'm in love with, Mr. Darcy and Mr. Knightley and Henry Tilney, and so many. So it's one of the joys of reading literature. You fall in love with these writers and their characters, and it so enriches your life.
Yes.
It gives a whole new dimension to life.
And there is something about, the sisterhood, which it is not Entirely, 100%. But there are some men dotted around the Jane Austen societies. But like some of the best times I've had, like so after I gave the talk, I went back to Susannah's house with some other ladies of Jane Austen persuasion. We just had a bloody good time. And same, I've given a talk to the Jane Austen Society of Adelaide. So I've met. So it's like a sisterhood that you meet through these things as well too. So you said, so are most of your friends Jane Austen inclined?
Many of my friends, and I've met so many wonderful people through the Jane Austen Society and also through my tours, because I do tours to so many different places. People who've enjoyed one will book for the next one in another country, although some people have actually done the same tour twice over. They've loved it so much. So that's really
Wow.
nice.
So I mean, that's the best review.
Most of my friends love books. I feel that that's almost a qualification. You don't like reading, then I'm really not going to have a lot of fun being with you. So I feel that books are necessary for a good friendship.
Now, there's one thing about the fact that so often if something appeals to women more, it's denigrated as being less than, or less worthy, or less or less intellectual. So what have you come up against that sort of thing?
Yes, you do. And I find that when I give a talk on a male writer, say Oscar Wilde or Shakespeare or Tolstoy, I do tend to get more men in the audience. So they think, oh, a female writer, no, it won't come. And that's so sad. I talked once to a teacher who was teaching Pride and Prejudice to boys in a high school. And he said that one of the mothers had come along and complained that he was teaching a book by a woman writer that was mainly about women to her son
Oh my
in an
God.
English class. And I thought, imagine a mother coming along or a father coming along and saying, well, you're teaching Dickens to my girls, and it's mainly about David Copperfield and his male friends. You should be teaching a book that's about girls. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. It makes me really angry.
Yeah, me too.
And I think there can be a lot of snobbery in the book world. It makes me cross when crime fiction is denigrated as being a sort of lesser genre. And of course, many of the great crime fiction writers are women. It was a job women could do from home. I think women do murder really well in literature. There's this sense, oh no, a crime novel shouldn't really be winning a Booker Prize or a major award. They're just crime novels. But I think it takes phenomenal skill to write a good crime novel and plot your clues properly. And
Mm.
had Jane Austen had that reading available to her, I think she'd have really enjoyed good crime fiction. So that makes me cross as well. There's
Mm.
snobbery around that too. I think the snobbery around Jane Austen is
Yeah.
going. Also get annoyed when English people think, well, Jane Austen belongs to them. Only English people can really understand Jane Austen. And
Right.
that's not true at all. Wonderful books about Jane Austen have been written by Australians, New Zealanders, and Americans and Canadians. Jane Austen is universal. And yes, she happened to be born in England and her books are set there, but that doesn't give English people a sort of exclusive right to understanding her.
Yeah.
So there is snobbery in the book
Yes,
world.
and it's often like it's like when you do a solo show as a woman, it's deemed to be for women. But if men do a solo show, then
It's for
everybody come on
everybody.
down.
Yes,
It's just so the same.
it's
And the thing I
ridiculous.
find quite interesting about Jane Austen too, people always like, why are people still doing it? But she's still so relevant,
Totally,
particularly in
totally
a
relevant.
yeah, when you think about like 2020, respiratory illnesses, the wage gap, housing instability, housing insecurity, all those sorts of things. It's still like because Jane Austen's all about the search for love and security.
Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
coping with a difficult employer like Mr. Collins, who has Lady Catherine as his employer. False friendships, as Isabella Thorpe is to Catherine Morland in Northanger Abbey. Working out who was going to be a worthwhile friend, somebody worth keeping. Falling in love with the wrong person. Having embarrassing parents like Mrs. Bennet. All those things are just as relevant in our world today as they were over 200 years ago when Jane Austen wrote the novels. And she teaches us so much about human nature, about other people and our friendships and our relationships. Just so many reasons for reading Jane Austen today.
Yeah, and I like because the other thing that really bothers me is when I read there was you may have seen it, a Guardian article recently by like a Gen Z going, why is everybody so obsessed with this? It's all about just marriage and who cares about marriage? I'm like, wow, you don't know what it was like to live in a time when you didn't even have any rights. Like this was before the Marital Rights sort of Act. I think I can't quite remember if that's what it was called, about the fact that all of the money went to the husband, that the only way to have any autonomy or anything was to be married. I reckon the best thing to be was widowed.
It's
Being widowed was the best thing to
Well, I
do.
mean, you look at Mrs. Ferrers and Sense and Sensibility. She's got control of her
Yeah,
money. So does
Lady
Lady
Catherine.
Catherine de
Yeah,
Bourgh. Mrs. Jennings. The widows do very nicely in Jane
yeah.
Austen's world. And then you look at women like Charlotte Lucas, who has to face the fact that she'll have Mr. Collins in her bed for the rest of her life.
And that's exactly what I was thinking of when I brought this up. That, and then the way that Elizabeth berates her for marrying such a revolting man as Mr. Collins, but then gets shown the reality,
Yes.
herself. She's almost like the Gen Z writing that today, whereas Charlotte Lucas slaps that down.
Absolutely.
And you see that the acceptance of the pragmatism of the situation.
Yeah. And Jane Austen was so aware of that. The terrible plight of women with no rights to their own money, no vote, and of course, not even any rights to their own bodies.
Yeah.
And she had two sisters-in-law who died giving birth to their 11th babies. She was very aware of when you did get married, you still were not guaranteed any sort of happiness. And in my book, Jane Austen and Crime, I write about adultery, which of course happens in Mansfield Park. And, the woman is so punished for the adultery, but the man isn't. He can pretty much get off scot-free.
Yeah, yeah.
Elopements to Gretna Green. What happens when a young woman like Lydia runs away with Mr. Wickham and doesn't even get to Gretna Green? Her reputation is damaged completely, but Wickham's isn't. He can just still continue to go where he wants to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so the penalties, as Jane Austen says, the penalties for women and for men are very, very different. And I think today we still have a lot of that. It's still more that the woman is blamed if it's an affair or whatever. And women in some parts of the world still lead unbelievably dangerous and insecure lives in places like Afghanistan. And they lead hideous lives with no education and no proper medical services for them because they're women. And then husbands don't want them to go to a male doctor, but there's no female doctors being trained. I mean, it's just appalling. So a lot of what Jane Austen writes about is sadly still in our world today.
I mean, absolutely, hugely. So you talked about her body there. So that's a good segue into my question that I ask everybody on this podcast, which is, what has your relationship been like with your body and what journey has it been on through your life?
Well, the best place for my body is lying on a bed holding a book. And I can't ever remember a time when that was not the case. Lying reading is the best place for my body. Sadly, that, of course, is not going to keep it going for as long as I want it to keep going. Yes. And so some exercise is involved. I have discovered that exercise is a lot easier when you can plug in an audio book.
I was going to say that.
And listen to it as you exercise. So that helps. Yeah, I guess my problem is I came from quite a sporty family. Most of them were good at sport, and I was the one that wasn't. And my favorite exercise in the world is turning the pages of a book, which is not going to make you lose weight.
It's not very good for your cardiovascular fitness, unless it's like, Mr. Willoughby being all very charming and then your heart might race.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
right, okay.
So that, I guess, means that, exercise doesn't come naturally to me. And as the years have gone by, I've put on a little bit more weight than I want and would like to lose it. So I guess that's really my big problem with my body, is that I'd love it to be the body of a gorgeous 20-year-old, slim and fit, but it's putting in that effort to get it to anywhere remotely near that stage that's so hard.
Right, okay. So, what's your journey like, would you say? Do you remember puberty? Did you relate it back to, Brontes or anything like that when you were going through that sort of thing? And actually, I'd be curious to know, I haven't actually looked into what sort of mentions there are around anything like that in the female literature of the time.
Not a lot. I mean, the whole concept of being a teenager is really a more modern one. I guess in Jane Austen's day, you were a child and then you had your coming out and suddenly you were an adult. And there's some discussion of that in Mansfield Park where they say, is Fanny Price out or is she not out? And I think it was a much more sudden thing from being a child to suddenly being an adult, and expected to behave like an adult and, of course, have an adult body. So a woman would have then put up her hair. She would not have shown much of a glimpse of ankle. She was expected to be more decorous. She would learn to dance and, of course, would need to use her body properly on the dance floor. That was very important. You had to make the most of that time dancing with a man. And in Jane Austen's day, if a man asked you to dance, the dance could go on for as long as 30 minutes. So it was a long time.
Right.
If Mr. Collins asked you to dance and you said no to him, then you were not allowed to stand up and dance with anybody else for the rest of the evening, because that was seen as being very insulting to the man you had turned down. So really you had no choice.
Right.
It's rather interesting to note that the one and only time in her novels when Jane Austen uses the word ecstasy is in connection with Mr. Collins. Elizabeth has been dancing with Mr. Collins, and we hear the moment of her release from him was ecstasy. So it's fascinating to think that the only reference to ecstasy in Jane Austen comes with Mr. Collins.
Right. Okay. That's so interesting. Did you
Yeah.
have any sort of coming out in an Auckland situation?
No, no, not really. I mean, in my teens, I just almost dived into novels. I read my way through the Brontes and through Jane Austen and through Georgette Heyer and every novel I could sort of get hold of. And of course, most of them were romantic. There'd be some sort of love affair. So I longed for Heathcliff to sweep me away to the moors, or Mr. Rochester to come up on his great black horse and take me off to the south of France to live with them there, which Jane refuses.
I don't know, the Brontes, there's a lot of burning to death in the attic and terrible boyfriends with the Brontes. I'm not a big fan of the Brontes. They do not
Well,
spin
see,
my
I loved
dials.
them in my teens, but now I look at them and I think, oh my goodness, Heathcliff needs a really good psychiatrist.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and not, yeah. So was there any, like, eastern suburbs boys or anything that in Auckland that was passing muster as Mr. Darcy or anything like that?
No, 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 I've never yet met a man who's even come remotely close to passing muster as Mr. Darcy. So they set very unrealistic standards, Penny. But
Yes, yes.
look, there were boys, and yes, I went to school dances and things like that. But I think I lived very intensely in my head through my teens, because of
Right.
the books I was reading. I had girlfriends and I had some social life, and I enjoyed all of that. But really, my major memories of my teens are looking back and thinking, yes, that was when I read that book, or that's when I read this book. So I think I lived so vividly in fiction throughout my teens. And I don't think I was a particularly difficult teenager for my parents to cope with. They had more of a challenge with the next sister that came along.
I see.
So I was pretty good and loved English at school. Of course, I did drama classes, which was wonderful. I was acting in various plays, and I was doing exams in speech and drama, which I really loved. So no, I think I was a pretty good teenager on the whole for my parents.
Right. And didn't really think about your body that much at that time, or?
No, not a lot. I mean, I'd have liked to have been taller. I'm the shortest in my family by quite a long way. So my
Mm-mm.
sisters always looked more elegant in their clothes because they were taller. I had to get contact lenses because I hated my glasses. Of course, everyone's got things about their body that they don't like. So inevitably, as a teenager, you're more aware of all of that. But I didn't get lots of spots or have any of those teenage problems. So I think I cruised through reasonably well with my teens. Yeah.
Right. Okay, great. And then university, was that like, because I found my tribe at university definitely with the comedy club and all that sort of stuff. So was it like that for you as well?
Yes, I started university young. I left school after the sixth form. I didn't do the seventh form. And I
Yeah.
went off to university. And my very first lecture was Professor Musgrove at Auckland University doing Dr. Faustus. And he was walking up and down the stage declaiming, "Is this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burned the topless towers of Ilium?" And I thought, I have found my spiritual home. I know I belong here. And I
Right.
went home and I said to my mum, I love university and I'm going to do a master's degree when I finish my BA. And she was very relieved because I was only 16 when I started, so I was very young. I wouldn't be allowed to now. I didn't miss school one bit because at school they made me do science and maths and all these other subjects I had no interest in whatsoever.
Right.
Whereas at university, I was able to do languages and I was able to do English. And it was just so wonderful to at long last feel that I was really getting the meat and the nitty gritty of these books that I loved so much. Yes, I was made to read some things I didn't love, but
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
but most of it, to do Wordsworth's poems, and I was just in total heaven. And not everybody in the class shared my passion, but I was sitting there completely rapt, loving every single minute
Right. I
of
can see
it.
that in your
And I
face.
had a nice social life. I had a boyfriend who was around for quite a few years, and not that he was a great reader, but everything was fine. So I adored Auckland University.
Right.
And when I go to Auckland now and I wander around and see the old grad building and see where I studied German, and there's nothing but happy memories. It was all
Yeah,
wonderful.
I had a pretty good time. I did English for the first year and I hated it. I dropped it faster than you could say. This is the most boring lecture of my entire life. The Shakespeare lecturer, one of them was so boring. Oh my God. It was just, he was the comedies lecturer. And it was just so boring. And Heart of Darkness. I was like, this book
Oh,
it's
yes.
fuck off. Excuse me. I just like,
Yes,
the
yes.
heart of, I just hated it so much. I dropped it as soon as I
Also
could.
hate Heart of Darkness. Can't see why anyone thinks it's a great novel.
Exactly. I was like,
Yeah,
this shit is boring. And so then I did classics and drama. And so obviously drama
yeah.
was the thing.
Well, we both have that love of drama, so it's so wonderful when you can act out or you can do good readings from the books that you love
Of course.
and act out the characters. It's fabulous.
Yeah. So then you went to Edinburgh. And where did you meet Ian again?
I met him in Edinburgh, so
You did.
yeah.
Right. And was he doing law there?
No, he wasn't actually. He was
Oh.
doing English. Not
Ah.
that he's done much since.
Right. Okay. Fantastic.
But yeah, we got engaged in Edinburgh and then we lived in London for some years, which was wonderful. We loved being right in the heart of London.
Yeah.
And then we sort of argued about whether we would move to South Africa, which is where he's from, or New Zealand, which of course is where I'm from. We couldn't solve that argument, so we sort of compromised and came to Sydney. And, it's been a great city to live in, and my career has been able to flourish here in a way it probably wouldn't in New Zealand because it's a much smaller population. I'm
100%.
living in Sydney, which has got a population of over 4 million.
Yeah.
So I can get people at my lectures and my book talks and my tours. So Sydney's been great. But I am a Kiwi. I'm a Kiwi.
Right. Yes. So do you have a favourite part of your body?
Oh. I once would have said my hair, which is lovely and thick and never had any worries about thinning hair. But of course now it's going grey, so I'm not so fond of it anymore.
Do you dye your hair?
Yes, I do,
Right.
but
No,
I'm wondering how much longer I should keep doing that.
as long as you want. Like, I know Peter
Yeah,
Matthias just stopped dyeing her hair a little while ago. I don't know if you
yes.
need, and now she's got this incredible silver hair, but I'm going to be doing this for quite some time yet. I'm
Yeah,
pretty
I think
sure.
I
So,
might be too.
yeah.
Yeah,
My mother is incredible. My mother is 79 and she doesn't dye her hair and it's still
yeah.
quite brown. So, yeah.
Fantastic. The other thing I think I'd have to say is my voice, because my voice is my job.
Yeah.
Giving talks, dramatic readings, reading poetry aloud, and I'm a good reader. And people say, "Oh, I love listening to you read." And yeah, I guess I'd say my voice.
And is your voice resilient?
Yes, very. Yeah,
Yeah. So you're going to hear.
I can do long talks without any trouble whatsoever. I can project my voice. People come up to me afterwards and say, "Oh, I could hear every word you said. It was such a relief."
Great. Yeah. My voice can have issues of like, it's like right now it's quite husky. Like, this is because I had a cold as opposed to doing shows. But I have to be very careful. I just bought a nebulizer. Where is it going? Like this nebulizer here for sucking the steam off it, etc., to keep it going. So yeah, having a resilient voice in this sort of industry is really important. Now, this podcast did start its life being about menopause. I have sort of branched out a little bit now, but do you have any takes on your own menopause? Like, how was it for you? You were from a generation like the previous one that just didn't have the information that we do now. So what was that like? And also, is there any mention of that in any Jane Austen or anything? I don't feel like I've seen that. But how was your menopause, young lady?
Well, a bit of a non-event, really. I never really sort of thought about it all that much. I thought, oh, well, thank goodness that part of having to go out and buy sanitary equipment has all come to an end. And so, no, I'd had 3 children. I didn't want more. There was no sort of grief connected with not having more children or anything like that. So, no, really pretty much of a non-event. I suspect that women in Jane Austen's era must have longed for it because it would have meant no more babies.
Yeah, well.
She knew somebody in her village who'd had 18 babies. And she wrote in a letter, I'm sure the poor woman, they ought to have separate bedrooms. I'm sure that poor woman longed for a separate bedroom.
Yeah.
So I think many of them must have greeted menopause with absolute delight. And then also coping with periods, lack of what we'd call modern equipment for all of that, they didn't have. Jane Austen grew up in a house with 6 brothers. So how did she and her sister cope when rags and other things had to be washed out? Can't have been easy for them.
No.
No privacy with toilets and in those long dresses, how did they keep everything in place? I think it must have been so difficult. So I think they probably greeted menopause with absolute relief in many
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah, yeah. And it's good you had an easy one too, because, there's, and what I think about, like I'm getting a bit hot right now. I've also got a fan nearby that I've been using. So did you get any hot flushes or anything like that?
Small, but nothing major.
Yeah.
No.
You're so
Yeah.
lucky. I call them
Yeah.
hot blushes because mine aren't too
Yes.
bad. Hot blushes.
Some friends have felt they could, power the whole of the national grid with the heat they're giving off. But
Yeah.
I had a bit, but nothing major. It was really,
Right.
on the whole, very easy. So,
Right. That's
I mean,
fantastic.
touch wood, my body has not really let me down in any particular way, except for putting on a few more pounds than I want. And that's my own fault, because food and books and wine all go so beautifully together.
They really do. And chocolate. Let's not forget chocolate.
Absolutely.
That's great, because sometimes I ask that question. It just, people can talk for 45 minutes, 50 minutes. I've got a lot of hang-ups. I've got a lot of chronic illnesses, a lot of things that have gone wrong with me. So I think it's quite extraordinary to get to the, how many minutes?
65.
65, and just be so content, etc. So
Mm.
well done.
Thank you. Well, when I go on my tours and I see, some of the tablets that tour members are having to take and all the medication they have to take with them, I stick a couple of Band-Aids in and a few aspirin just in case
Wow.
I get very mild asthma, so I take a atomizer.
Right.
But that's the extent of my medication
That's
when I go traveling. So long may it last, because, my blood pressure's good and
yeah.
cholesterol and all those things are all good. So,
That is good, especially
yeah.
if you, because like I take my epilepsy medication. I take statins now because I've got family history of cholesterol, because I diet, like quite a lot, and still have to do that. And I, like, in the past, I've surprised my husband with like trips to a hotel, and I'm like, I can't do that anymore because I don't know what medications he needs. Because he got gout actually during lockdown, which is
Oh,
very, very historic, very
a very Jane
Regency.
Austen
Yeah,
thing,
exactly.
yes,
It's like
yeah,
the Prince Regent. So that is
yeah,
remarkably good of you, yes. And
yeah,
I think about, and I constantly think about this, just because I've talked to a lot of people about menopause, and some people had horrendous menopauses, particularly around the fact that so many women were institutionalized with various women's ailments, except they were just told they were crazy. And I just sort of think about women that had debilitating, like vulvodynia, like really painful vulva things, and lichen
mm,
sclerosis, and all this sort of stuff in these eras, who would not have been able to say a thing to anyone, and the
no,
suffering that they had to endure.
yes,
It's
yeah. It
pretty.
must have been awful, and especially if it was in a part of your body that was never talked about.
Exactly.
And even going to a doctor. I mean, all the doctors in Jane Austen's day were men, and
Yeah.
most of them didn't really know what they were doing. There was not great understanding of medicine. And when, Jane Austen became sick with the illness that would kill her, which might be Addison's disease, but we can't be certain. She'd have had no idea. She wouldn't have even had Dr. Google to have a look at, or absolutely nothing to help her understand what was going wrong with her body and what might be happening.
Yeah.
And I guess gradually she thought, right, getting weaker and weaker, clearly I'm going to die. But she didn't even know what she was dying from. And
Mm.
today it's hard to even imagine. But she had no idea what she was dying from, or what on earth she could do that might make things any better.
Yeah.
Tragic to think of, and that there was so little understanding, and all those poor women who died in childbirth, and just hideous for them. So
Yeah.
I'm very grateful to be a modern woman when it comes to medicine. So yeah, I
I
think we've
know. Some
found
people
out.
say, like, like Lost in Austin, when that woman goes back to Austin times, like, would you want to be in? I'm like, no, no, I
Yeah,
like tampons. I like
yeah,
paracetamol. Yeah, I would not want to be. I like getting dressed up and pretending for a while,
absolutely.
and
That's
then,
a different matter altogether, and
yes,
we can go home to our
flushing
modern
toilets.
comforts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
nothing lose. Very important.
All that sort of thing. I know. And actually, for me, the thing that I have, I mean, I love Austen's stories and characters, but the thing I've been drawn most to is her and her story. And I always
Mm.
cry when I talk about her. I'm like, where does this come from? I don't know. Just all of that. She was 41 only when she died. She died in her sister's arms. She struggled her whole life to be published. She was finally published.
She made so little money.
Yes. And then said, oh, these ones have made a lot of money for other people. Now I'm going to put this book out, which didn't sell anywhere near as well, with Mansfield Park and Northanger Abbey. And so, and then she dies.
Yes.
It's just
And if
sad.
somebody had been able to let her know before she died that there would be a Jane Austen Society in Australia, which is the largest literary society in this country, that this year a Jane Austen Society in France was started, There are Jane Austen societies in Spain, in Belgium, in Brazil, Argentina, Singapore, Japan, the Philippines. How amazed she would have been.
Yeah.
And I think she'd have had her hand out for some of the money and said, please, could I have some of this money that has been made in my name?
I
When you
mean,
think of the merchandise, the movies, the sequels, the prequels, the theatre shows, all these things that have, the books that have been written about her. So
yeah,
many people have made money from Jane Austen.
both of us.
Both of us. Not a cent of it, of course, enriched her in any way. And she died thinking four published at the time of her death, no particularly famous name. Had she been able to somehow know that she would be the most famous woman writer in the history of the world,
Yeah.
how extraordinary
Yeah.
that would have been.
I just wrote a piece for a play market in New Zealand about why I wrote Sense and Sensibility, and that was the very last thing I said, if only she could see. Yeah. I donated money to the Jane Austen House in England.
Excellent. Yeah, we make donations to good causes, and I think that's important that we keep her house going. Also, at the moment, we all need to be signing a petition because there's a terrible building development planned all around Chawton. And we're all signing a petition. I'll send you a link, Penny, to sign this and try and stop this dreadful 20,000 houses going up in and around. So the lovely countryside that she walked through is at risk, really got to be stopped. So we've really got to do something about, making sure that doesn't happen.
I love visiting, because that's the thing with the literary tourism. Like, I wonder about this for me at some point. We have talked about that, like, because I did a little bit of my own literary tourism. Like, I went to Chawton, I went to her gravestone in the Winchester Cathedral, which doesn't even mention her books, which blew my mind.
It's extraordinary.
It's just crazy. Like there's that sculpture there now. It was actually sculpted by my friend who used to be an Austen Found's wife's mother, which is crazy. And then I went to like Beatrix Potter. I went to the lakes and I went up to Hilltop Farm and I went to Cockermouth because I had to get my picture with the sign for a start in Cockermouth. And that was Wordsworth. And I really enjoyed doing all that sort of stuff. So it is quite fun taking people around to show them these things that they've learned about.
It's fabulous. And everybody reacts differently to different places. So, what will be one person's sort of sacred place will mean very little to another.
Yeah.
For example, I take people to Virginia Woolf's home, Monk's House. Now, I'm not a huge Virginia Woolf fan, but some people in the tour are, and for them, that's one of the absolute highlights of the tour.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, standing by Jane Austen's grave, getting this year into the room where she died, and reading the letter that Cassandra wrote about Jane Austen's last moments, it chokes me up now.
Me too.
And there was not a dry eye in the room, I can tell you.
I'm sure.
So, and walking where Wordsworth walked, standing in Kipling's Divine Garden and seeing his study. There's just so many wonderful places. And so taking people to these spots is magical, I think.
Yeah.
And yet everybody responds differently, and every place is different on a different day with different weather and a different group.
Especially in England.
You don't get sick of it you because it's always going to be a different experience.
Yeah, I've been back to the grave twice because I did a bit of a tour around, and then I also did my show in the Theatre Royal in Winchester, which was
wonderful.
It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful spot to do the show. So that was really cool as well.
City.
Yeah, and I loved being in Hilltop, and like Hilltop Farm with Beatrix Potter. Like I really liked the movie Miss Potter as well, but just being
it was excellent.
Yeah, it was really good, wasn't it? And being in that garden, and I mean they probably put it there like that thing that looks like it's in Mr. McGregor's garden, and just seeing those in there, I just thought was just...
There's the watering can and the overturned flower pot and Farmer McGregor's spade. And it's wonderful.
Yeah, they've done a really good job with that. I'm just trying to find this letter. You probably know it off by heart. But because I put the part of this letter actually when, in my Sense and Sensibility, when Marianne is very sick and Eleanor is like willing her to live, I put... You are, I can't say it either without crying, especially with my voice right now. You are, she was the sun of all of our lives and the gilder of my every pleasure and such a sister that could never be surpassed. You're like,
I know.
And she died in her arms.
It's so moving.
So it would have been. Did you read it out or did someone read it to you?
No, I read it out and I was so choked up.
I know. It's just, but it's so English too, because then she goes, but we'll get over it. That's what I feel like. The rest of that letter is so funny
And
because
she
it's
wasn't
like,
allowed to attend the funeral because women didn't. So she watched out the window as the men, and the coffin was taken off to the cathedral, and the men walking with it. But she had to watch from the window, and she was not there at her sister's funeral
wow.
because women then didn't go to
Oh man,
funerals. And yet Cassandra was the person Jane Austen loved most in the world,
in the world.
and
Yeah,
her
yeah.
sister was not there at her funeral.
See, look at me. I'm getting sweaty because I've showed emotion.
Yeah.
But also, I know you don't swear very much, but they can fuck off. It just makes me furious. I say fuck a lot around historical misogyny, around people using. Jane Austen wrote about the only world that she was allowed to inhabit, and
Yes,
then people use that to hold her down and say that she's
yes.
less than and it's just women's stuff. That can also fuck off. I just get really angry around
Or
it all.
stupid men like the Prince Regent's librarian are pompous and condescending and tell her what really she ought to be writing. She should do a book on the House of whatever and, Saxe Coburg, and she should do this and she should write about him. That was
Yeah,
really his suggestion.
yeah.
And Jane Austen writes a wonderfully witty reply and says, she could never write such a serious work if she were to be hanged for attempting it. There's this man who is only now remembered because he wrote stupid things to Jane Austen. It's the only reason he's remembered. And yet he's condescending to her because he's a man.
Yeah, and that he asked her to, dedicate Emma to him.
Yes,
I mean, that's just the amazing, from her lifetime, as much as she didn't know, what she would become, she did the leap from, the first book, if people don't know, Sense and Sensibility was published in 1811, and it was written by a lady.
mm.
Like, it was even unseemly to have a woman do any sort of employment, to have her name on it. But then by 1816, is that when Emma was published?
Yeah, end of 1815, beginning of
Yeah.
1816. Yeah.
So just, that short time later,
Mm.
she's being asked by the Prince Regent to dedicate this book
Mm.
to him. So
Mm.
that it is an amazing trajectory in her
Mm.
lifetime, but then nothing on what it would become. But
Yes.
I found it quite interesting too, because she fell out of favor, didn't she, for a bit? But things like people were reading her in the trenches in World War One because it was so
Yes,
removed.
she was very big in the trenches, and in World War II, the books were taken down into the underground when bombing was happening up above, and I think people sort of retreated into her calmer, saner world.
Yeah.
Victorians sort of were not such enormous Jane Austen fans, and readers were turning to Dickens, George Eliot, the Brontes, Elizabeth Gaskell, Thackeray. She always, of course, kept her admirers.
Yeah.
And
And she was never out of print.
very briefly, a couple of the books went out
Okay.
of print, but it was only a fairly brief time.
Right.
Then, of course, they came and they began appearing in cheaper editions that were sold at places like railway bookstalls. And then people could buy a Jane Austen book to read on the train. So that all, meant that more and more people were getting hold of her books because when she was writing, of course, books were all very expensive.
Right.
Get them from the lending library or you'd borrow them from friends or whatever. But by the end of the 19th century, books were becoming much, much cheaper. And so people could afford to get a 1-volume Pride and Prejudice instead of having to buy an expensive 3-volume set, which was the case when Pride and Prejudice was first published. It came out in 3
It's
volumes.
so small.
So, yes, I know.
I mean, Dickens, sure. But because I'm actually planning on, I'm going to try and write an adaptation I've got of Nicola Nickleby is the idea.
Oh,
And then,
wonderful. Yeah, I know.
yeah, and then
They're
just look at
huge.
that bloody, it's like
I know.
it's like a,
Oh, I love the idea of Nicola Nickleby. That should be excellent.
oh, well, I'm glad. I need to hurry up and do it. The thing, my problem is I don't like writing.
I love writing.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's why you've written books and things, and it's why I do a new play.
And that's why you're on stage.
Yeah, but I write my material. It takes me because I'm very tight, so I don't want to pay anybody anything, basically. So that's what it takes so long for me. One thing that I do love about the whole Jane Austen world too is, well, you can really know when someone has permeated the groundwater of the zeitgeist and all that sort of stuff is the merch. Right? Like I sell tea towels, which go very well, but I bought my
Yes.
favorite rubber ducky from your Jane Austen.
Excellent.
And
Yes.
it's got Pond and Prejudice,
Yes.
but there are ducks. Charles Dickens is pretty funny. I like Charles Dickens, and he's reading
Yes.
Bleak House.
Yes.
I saw that in your bathroom, and I was very entertained. But just the absolute, and there's so much more Austen merch than anything
it's
else.
extraordinary. Yes.
Yeah, I've got socks.
I love merchandise too. I've produced a beautiful tea towel to go with my cat book.
Yes.
With some of the wonderful quotes from people like Mark Twain and others about about cats, and that's selling like hotcakes. It's doing really
Fantastic.
well.
Yeah, my tea towels certainly add value to my touring, that is for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. And the Jane Austen Society, of course, sells lots of fabulous merchandise.
Yes, I feel like that's the best merch stand I've
Yeah,
seen.
it's very good. Yeah,
Yes, it
bookmarks,
really
carry
is.
bags, umbrellas, key rings, post-it notes,
Yes,
notepads, you name it.
I was
Um,
impressed.
yeah.
Yes.
Although we don't sell my very favourite item of Jane Austen merchandise, it was produced in America at one stage, and it was a shocking pink nightie, and it had printed across the front of it, "Not tonight, dear. I'm reading Jane Austen."
Or obstinate headstrong girl would be good in that situation.
It wouldn't do.
You've got a ring too, haven't you? One of those
I've got the turquoise ring, yes,
on
yeah,
right now, in fact. Look
yeah.
at that.
Always
Yes,
on my
indeed.
finger. Secret
Yes.
symbol of Janeites.
Ah, yes. And that is the ring that Kelly Clarkson tried to buy, but
Yes.
then people got together to keep it in England.
Well, she did buy it, but then it
Oh,
had to be sold back. So she
right.
purchased it, and then the British government got very concerned about this historic item being taken from the country. She just got engaged, and she wanted to wear it as her engagement ring. And
Wow.
she's a big Jane Austen fan.
Right.
So then it was agreed that it came up for sale again, and the price she had paid for it was not met. And I think that was £160,000. If the price was not met, then she would be allowed to take it back to America with her. But if the price was met, then the ring had to stay in Britain.
Right.
And it meant that Jane Austen groups around the world had a little bit more time to prepare, because we hadn't even heard of the ring being sold the first time.
Ah.
We had time to prepare, and different groups, including JASA, the Jane Austen Society of Australia, sent money. One American donor sent £100,000 to get the fund off to a good start.
A very good start.
Very good start. So they raised more than enough money, and
Right.
it was sold to Chawton, and the turquoise ring is on display in Chawton, which is really where it ought to be. So
That's where
it's
I saw
wonderful.
it. Absolutely. Right now, we've been yammering on for ages, and I'm sure we could forever. But so now I've got. Do you have a fun fact at all? And it could be about yourself. But what? Any fun fact?
Well, one day at school, I actually did manage to hit the softball when it was thrown to me with the bat.
One day.
And it was such a rare event that the entire class began clapping.
Oh.
So there you go.
Wow. Did that make you feel good or bad?
A bit mortified.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever played softball since.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I know sometimes when you think about like always being picked last and stuff like that, it was very cruel.
I lived for some years in Tokoroa and went to Tokoroa High School, and we were made to play hockey, which I loathed. And I was the youngest in my class and also the smallest in my class.
Right.
And there would be these fabulously fit and energetic Polynesian or Maori girls who were wielding their hockey sticks, tearing towards me, and I just retreated in total terror.
Yeah.
So if I was very lucky, there'd be an odd number for the teams, and I would volunteer to sit out at the side of the field, and then a book would come out.
And then read my book.
Or
Well,
if there was no book, I'd make daisy chains, and I was far happier making daisy chains than playing hockey.
Oh my God! So you used to have much more jolly hockey sticks as opposed to actually hockey playing. So
There's no jolly. I like to read about jolly hockey sticks, but certainly not play it.
Mallory Towers, etc. We haven't even talked about Blyton. She's a very interesting character as well. I've done a lot about her too. Yeah. Anyway, so is there anything you would like to plug specifically now?
No, just to say that I'm incredibly proud of my new book, which was published by the Bodleian Library in Oxford.
Oh, that's
so that
right.
was a real thrill.
Very fancy.
Having them as a publisher has just been absolutely divine.
Mm.
The book has been selling incredibly well. I love chatting with Jim Mora on New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Radio National.
I'll put a link in the episode notes.
Yep. So that was great fun to do. He was, of course, a very good interviewer, and we had a lovely chat.
Yep.
And so all that's been tremendously exciting. So at the moment, my life is just really moving between cats and Jane Austen.
Cats and Jane Austen.
Jane Austen anniversary and my new book. So I wake up in the morning and think, oh, today, is it Jane Austen or is it cats? So unfortunately, I couldn't link them. Jane Austen had made so few references to cats that I simply couldn't have a chapter on her in my book, much as I'd have liked. So I'm now planning to write a book on great writers and the dogs who love them. And that way I'll keep the dog people happy as well as the cat people.
Right.
But I'm very proud of my new book. So I do hope that people get it and read it. And also I hope that on this incredibly important literary anniversary, Jane Austen's 250th birthday, I hope that everybody who has ever had any pleasure from her works or get out a book, doesn't matter which of the six it is, open it at whatever page and read and just sink into that wonderful world created by the greatest novelist the world has ever known, Jane
Do
Austen.
you have one line to finish us with?
Well, Mr. Knightley describes Emma as faultless in spite of all her faults, which I have always loved.
Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful description of Emma and what a fabulous character she is. Jane Austen has, as far as I can see, almost no faults as a novelist. She is faultless.
Absolutely, as all women are.
Absolutely.
Indeed, and tell Ian that. And on those notes, thank you so much for coming and entertaining us with your vast, honestly, the knowledge inside your head is so vast. You are fending off dementia with every new tour. I am so impressed, and I will see you at some point.
We both do our best, don't we, Penny? And it's
We
lots of
do.
fun. So fabulous to chat with you, and
You too.
happy Christmas.
You too. Thanks very much.